Tonight I will read letters I never sent. They were written on different nights, to different people, across more years than I care to name. None of them ask for an answer. None of them require you to remember what came before. If you are listening, you may listen lightly. And if you begin to drift, you may drift without apology. There is nothing to solve here. Only the sound of pages and the quiet of a voice that has outlived its urgency. We will begin. Letter 1. To the one who slept beside the window. I wrote this to you after the house became quiet again. Not the kind of quiet that follows an argument, the softer kind, when someone has simply gone. Your chair was still near the window. I never moved it. In the evening, the light rested there as though it expected you to return. I remember the way you slept, always facing the glass, as if listening for something outside that never came. You used to say the night felt larger from that side of the room, that it made breathing easier. I did not understand then how a window could make space inside a person. There were mornings I woke before you and watched the city begin without us. The lamps fading, the street empty and patient, the first delivery carts moving like slow thoughts. You would have liked that hour. You always did. I am not writing to ask anything of you. There is nothing left to say that would change what happened. I write because remembering you has become quieter than forgetting. The weight of it has softened, not disappeared, only learned where to rest. If you ever wondered whether you mattered after you left, know this: the room still remembers you, even when the night does not. That is all. Letter 2. To the one who laughed in the cathedral dark. I have carried your laughter longer than I carried your name. It surprised me at first, how sound can remain when everything else is taken. We stood once in a place of stone and shadow, where the ceiling vanished into darkness and the candles were too small to claim the air. Someone had left the doors open. Rain moved in softly, and the smell of wet streets followed it, polite as a guest. You said something I cannot recall now, not the words, only the intent. And then you laughed, as if you had remembered a secret the world had forgotten. It was not cruel laughter. It did not cut. It warmed. It changed the room. I watched the sound leave you and fill the space above us, and for a moment I believed time might be kind. I did not tell you what I was. You did not ask. You looked at me as though the answer did not matter. That was your gift, to treat the unknown as harmless until it proved otherwise. I have thought of you in many seasons since. I have watched winters repeat themselves, each one certain it was the first. And still, the memory that returns most often is not your face. It is that brief, bright sound in a place built for reverence. If I could send this letter into the past, I would not warn you. I would not beg you to stay. I would only say, thank you for making the dark feel temporary. Letter 3. To the one who left by train before dawn. I remember the station more clearly than I remember your goodbye. Perhaps because I was still pretending I could be ordinary, still practicing the habits of the living as if repetition would make them true. The benches were cold. The metal tasted like winter. A man swept the floor without looking up, and his broom made a steady sound that felt like forgiveness. You wore a coat too thin for the hour. You always insisted you were fine. You always believed the body could be convinced. Your hands were warm, though, warmer than mine. You held a ticket between your fingers as if it were a fragile thing, as if the paper itself might decide to change its mind. When the train arrived, it did not rush. It sighed into the station like an old animal settling down. You stepped forward, then stopped, and that pause was the most honest part of the night. I watched you measure your life against the shape of my silence. I could have spoken then. I could have said the thing you wanted, the thing you were afraid to ask for. I could have given you a vow that would have sounded like safety. But I have learned over time that promises made in desperation are only another way of taking. So I let the moment remain what it was, unfinished, unforced. You touched my sleeve, not my hand, as if you already understood that some contact carries too much. Then you boarded, and the train took you away with a gentleness that felt almost merciful. I stayed behind with the swept floor, the fading lanterns, and a quiet that did not accuse me. If you ever think of that night, I hope you remember this. I did not let you go because you were unworthy of being kept. I let you go because I could not bear to be the reason you stopped moving forward. Letter 4. To the one I met only in winter. You belonged to winter the way some people belong to music, completely, without apology. In the months when the air sharpened and the streets emptied earlier, you appeared again, as if called by the cold. You wore gloves, always, even indoors, and when you removed them, you did it slowly, as if the skin beneath was something delicate. We never spoke of summer. It was an agreement without words. The season did not suit us. We met in quiet places, bookshops with dim lamps, cafes where the windows fogged, rooms where the fire did not quite reach the corners. You would sit with your hands around a cup and stare into the steam as if it contained a second life. Once, you told me you felt most alive when the world looked dead. I understood you, not as a metaphor, as a fact. There is a clarity in winter, fewer distractions, fewer false hopes. The trees do not pretend to be generous, and you, too, did not pretend. You were gentle, yes, but you were never vague. When you spoke of leaving, you did not dress it in softness. You said it the way winter says it, by simply arriving. I cannot stay, you told me. Not dramatically, not bitterly, as if you were describing the weather. I nodded, and it was the truth. Neither of us belonged to permanence then. We belonged to a season, and the season was ending. I write now because I have carried you every time the air turns cold and clean. I do not miss you in the summer. I do not look for you in spring. But when winter returns and the night comes early, I still feel the shape of you beside me, quiet as breath on glass. If there is an afterlife where we are allowed to meet again, I hope it has no sun, only a soft cold and a place to sit without explanation. Letter 5. To the one whose portrait I kept too long. There was a painting of you once, small enough to hide, beautiful enough to ruin an evening. It was not a grand portrait, no velvet curtain, no staged nobility. Only your face turned slightly away, as if you had heard something behind you and chose not to look. I kept it in a drawer beneath old papers, not because I was ashamed, because I knew I would open that drawer too often if it were easier. I have lived long enough to learn that grief can become a ritual. At first, I told myself I kept the portrait to honor you. Then I realized I kept it to keep the wound from closing. It is a strange comfort to hold something that hurts. Pain is reliable. It proves there was once a life inside you that touched the world. Some nights I would take the portrait out and set it on the desk beside a candle. The light would move across the paint and make you seem almost alive, as if you might turn your head and speak. You never did, of course. But my mind is obedient to hope, even when it knows better. One night the candle burned too low. Smoke rose and darkened the edge of the frame. For a moment I panicked, not because I feared losing you, but because I feared losing my reason to keep returning to the same sorrow. That was the night I understood what I had done. I did not love you more by keeping the portrait. I only kept myself smaller. So I wrapped it carefully in cloth and carried it out, not to destroy it, but to release it. I gave it to someone who could keep it without bleeding. And when I came back to the room, the drawer felt lighter, the air less crowded. If you could see me now, I hope you would not mistake that for betrayal. Some love is not meant to be preserved. Some love is meant to be trusted, and then let go. Letter 6. To the one I loved after I had learned better. You came later, after I had already made my mistakes and lived long enough to recognize their pattern. I did not approach you the way I once would have. I did not wrap myself in mystery and call it depth. I did not let silence do all the work. I spoke to you plainly as I was able. And you did not try to save me. That may be the truest kindness I have ever known. You sat beside me as if I belonged there, not as a project, not as a tragedy, just as someone. When you touched my hand, you did not search for a pulse. You did not test the story for cracks. You held what was offered and did not demand more. We spent nights together that were almost ordinary. Tea cooling on the table, music so soft it was nearly imagined. a book open between us that neither of us finished. And in those hours I felt something unfamiliar. Not hunger, not fear, not longing. Peace. I did not think I deserved it. I did not think I could keep it. But you taught me something simple. That peace is not kept. It is entered. You left eventually. Of course you did. The living have their own seasons, and I have learned not to resent them. When you told me, you did not apologize for being human, and I did not ask you to be anything else. I write this letter to say what I did not say then, because the moment was too quiet and I did not want to disturb it. You gave me a kind of love that did not ask me to become less monstrous overnight. It only asked me to be present, and I was. If that is all we ever were, a handful of nights, a calm table, a hand held without suspicion, then it was enough. It remains enough.
That is all I will read tonight. If you are still awake, you do not need to hold these letters. Let them fall away the way paper falls, slowly, without resistance. And if you are drifting, go without ceremony. The night will keep its promises. It will ask nothing more of you.